I want to see what people are saying about it because I'm sure there's some haters out there. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Staj if you're new here, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a fun video where I'm going to be reading 1-star reviews for books that I thoroughly enjoyed reading. Now, these books don't necessarily have to be books that I rated 5 stars. It can also be books that I rated 4 stars as well, but just overall really enjoyed the read, and I just want to see what people are saying. Like, why didn't you like these books? I want to know. So I'm going to be looking at those reviews today. So let's get into it. So a few things that I did want to note. First is I'm going to be using Goodreads to read these reviews. Goodreads is what I typically use just to track my reading progress, just to check other reviews, all of the things. So that's what I'm going to be using today to read these 1-star reviews. Also, if you don't have me as a friend on Goodreads, definitely do so. I have my link down below in the description, and you can be able to keep up with me and see what I'm reading in real time. Another thing that I did want to note is the books that I'm going to be talking about today are across a wide range of genres, so fiction, nonfiction, all of those things. I would say one that I don't have, or one genre that I don't typically read, is fantasy. So if you are expecting fantasy in this lineup, I'm sorry, but that's not typically a genre that I read. And lastly, I won't spend too much time talking about what the books are about, but I will give maybe like a 1 to 2 sentence synopsis on what the overall book is about. So let's get into it. So the first book that I thoroughly enjoyed reading is A Love Song by Ricky Wilde. I actually read this last year. This was my first book from Tia Williams, and I truly enjoyed it. This is more of, it's considered romance, but I would say there's also a little bit of historical fiction and some although I don't read fantasy, a little bit of like magic, realism, a little bit of fantasy in there as well. So I did thoroughly enjoy this, and I would definitely read this again. I gave this a 4 stars. So overall, the book is about a girl named Ricky, and she moves to New York to open up a flower shop, and she ends up running into this guy named Ezra, and they just keep bumping into each other. And for some reason, Ezra is acting really weird. He's a musician. He plays the piano, and he's just been acting weird every time he bumps into Ricky. They start to like each other, and every time they get closer, Ezra starts to pull away. And as they get closer, Ezra starts to get a little bit hesitant in getting closer to Ricky. And there's a couple reasons why, and you'll find out if you read this book. But overall, I thought it was a really beautiful story. So let's see what the people are saying. This person said, "People need to stop hyping books that are not to be hyped. This book was a struggle to read and boring as hell. Waste of money. DNF. I just couldn't do it. Romance my ass." Dang, that's how you feel. I guess I can understand what she's saying, but I feel like it's not your typical romance. So if you're expecting that typical like contemporary romance, I don't know if you'll quite get that in this book. So I guess I can understand what she's saying. So this person actually wrote a longer review, but I won't read the whole thing. It says, "I will start by asking the writer to please tell us who actually wrote 7 Days in June, because there is absolutely no way that this was the same person. The only elements of that writer that I felt in this book was in Breeze Walker's first few chapters. The voice was different. The writing style was different. Everything about the current timeline is horrible." I feel like another popular book from Tia Williams is 7 Days in June. I feel like that's how most people got introduced to her work. That's a super popular romance novel, but this one is completely different. And so I can see if you read 7 Days in June first and then read A Love Song for Ricky Wilde and expected the same thing, could have been disappointed. But to me, like I said, I really enjoyed that it was different. I feel like sometimes if you're expecting the same type of format or layout from an author, it can get a little bit of redundant. So I do like that Tia Williams stepped out of her comfort zone and wrote something completely different than what most people would probably expect. Okay, let's look at a couple more. Okay, so this one says, "Wish I could give 0 stars. Whole book gave me the ick. I hated this book. Everything I hate in a book. Corny, not even remotely compelling romance. Relationship was not believable at all. Writing was boring. Plot was predictable. Book club is not ready for me. Also, Ricky's character was obnoxious. I'm glad she doesn't exist, so I'll never have to talk to her." Well, yeah. Of course, you're not ever gonna have to talk to her because she's just a character in a book. But I don't feel that this book was predictable at all, especially when you get to like, there's this one point in the book where you get to that type of magic realism slash fantasy where it's like, oh, I wasn't expecting that at all, but it's a fun twist to me. I really like that twist. It wasn't predictable at all to me. And I'm sad that you felt that way, but I felt differently. All right, let's read one more for this book. Someone said, I'm finding Tia Williams' books very hit and miss. This was atrocious. Sheesh. I wouldn't call it atrocious, but I will say all of Tia's books that I've read so far, I've only read 3 of her books, and she has another one coming out that I can't wait to get to, but they've all been so different in their own ways. And like I mentioned before, if you read 7 Days in June and expected the same thing for this book, you're definitely not going to get it. I like how so multi-dimensional this book was. Like I said, it wasn't just a typical contemporary romance. There's some historical fiction in there. There's some magic realism in there. There's some plot twists in there. And so for me, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It didn't feel predictable to me. So I don't know why people felt that way, but I really liked it. Okay, let's get into the next book. The next book that I'm going to be looking at reviews for is The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. I read both The Perfect Marriage and The Perfect Divorce. The Perfect Divorce is the second book in this little series. And I will say I really enjoyed this book. I read it last year. It had me on the edge of my seat. I finished it fairly quickly, got through it fairly quickly, and I just loved it. It kept me on my toes. Essentially, it's about a married couple, a woman named Sarah and her husband Adam, and ultimately she finds out that her husband was not only cheating on her, but also the mistress that he was cheating on her with is found dead. And ultimately, Sarah, who is a lawyer in the DC area, ends up having to defend her husband in this case. And it's just so juicy. Like, once you get to the end, you're like, oh my gosh, I did not expect that to happen. So this one is a really good one. It'll have you on the edge of your seat. If you like really good like thrillers and mystery books, you'll definitely like this one. So let's see what the people are saying. Okay, someone said, disappointing, started off promising, but rushed at the end with too many plot holes. If you read Gone Girl, you could see this coming, but without the details that truly pulled it all together. Ending was disappointing. I was left feeling, that's it. I don't know. Respectfully, I have to disagree because for me, I feel like once I got to the ending, I was like clutching my pearls. So I don't understand how people thought there were so many plot holes and that it was rushed towards the end. I don't know. Another person said, don't know how this book is so highly rated. I had to speed read through parts of it just so I could finish it. I thought the premise was really interesting and wanted to know who the killer was, which was why I didn't DNF it. But man, I wish I had. The reveal and ending were not worth it at all. Those are hours of my life that I won't get back. But hey, at least that's one more book read for my reading challenge. It wasn't that bad. I don't understand. A whole 1 star? Like, I don't know. I don't know how you could DNF this one. It was really good to me. Let's read 2 more. Someone said, don't waste your time. First part was okay. Felt like a decent whodunit. Then it got incredibly stupid. Had a tough time finishing it. Reminded me of those trashy detective magazines that used to be available. Yikes. Again, I don't understand. I don't understand. I truly enjoyed it. I don't know. Let's read 1 more. Someone said, why? Groan. I called the ending and I wish I was wrong. I'm torn, but also not. This book was on its way to being a 5-star read for me. I was completely hooked. The pacing, the tension, the twist, everything worked. I couldn't put it down. And then the ending happened. I don't know, maybe I'm oblivious because I did not see the ending coming. The way that Geneva wrote this book, it made it seem like there were a few people who we could have thought were the suspects and were responsible for killing the husband's mistress. But maybe I'm oblivious. I don't know. I didn't realize who was going to be the killer until I read the ending. So Yeah, I don't know. Next book that I'm going to read reviews for is, I feel like it's really well known. It's a fiction book, but it's more philosophical. There's some mysticism in there, but I personally read it twice and I feel like there's something that I always take away, and it is The Alchemist. I'm sure you've heard of it. I know there's a lot of mixed reviews. I always see mixed reviews online, on Threads, on Twitter, on TikTok about this book, but for me, I thoroughly enjoy it, and I see it being one of those books that I will always go to if I feel lost, or if I feel some sort of self-doubt, or if I need a source of inspiration, especially if you're working towards something or you have a goal in mind and you feel like the journey is kind of taking you out in a way. Because in this book, the main character has a dream that he becomes rich with gold, and this book basically follows his journey on finding that gold. He is so set on finding that gold. And, it's a lot on how the journey really impacts you as a person in terms of getting to this specific thing that you have dreamt about or want so badly, and desire so much, and really appreciating that journey and the ups and downs of that journey, the people that you meet, what lessons can be learned, and also not fixating on the end goal, but also knowing that, what you want is basically, it's yours. It's yours already. But I won't get too far into it, and let's just read the reviews, because I know there's a lot of controversy on this book, and I'm curious to see what people are going to say about this book. So let's see what people are saying. Someone said, the problem with this book is not just that it's bad, which it certainly is, but that there are so many people out there who want to corner you at parties and tell you how it's totally changed their lives. In a way, you might as well read it just so you can see how feeble-minded they are, just so they can get some kind of philosophical nourishment out of this inexhaustible stream of cliches. Okay, sir. If that's how you feel. For me personally, I definitely felt like this book has changed my life and my mindset. There's so many pages that I have dog-eared or highlighted in this book, and sometimes I'll just go to my bookshelf, pick it up, and just flip to one of those pages that I've highlighted or dog-eared, and just read the quote and just let it sit with me for the day, because it might be something that I really needed during that time or moment in my life. And I feel like there's so many lessons that can be learned and gems in here that can be taken away and applied to pretty much anyone, because all of us, we're always going through something, right? We have some sort of journey that we're on in this lifetime. And I feel like this is a book that can always be referenced at any point in your life. So I'm sorry to disagree with you, sir, but yes, this book has definitely changed my life. All right, let's read another one. Someone just said sucks in all caps. Yikes. Someone said, I simply could not finish this book. I got halfway through only to wind up on Goodreads.com to see what others thought. I simply felt guilty panning a book that has received such global acclaim. More than that, I felt lame and inadequate. I guess it wasn't your cup of tea, sir. Someone said, reading this book feels like walking through an endless warehouse full of those decorative signs with platitudes written on them from Target. Reading this for school. I don't know. You know what? Sometimes I feel like people try to make things seem like they're corny when they're not. Like, it depends on the individual. Like, are you deep? Do you think for yourself? Or are you just saying that it's fake deep quotes because you want to follow the crowd? You know what I mean? You're telling me there wasn't one thing from this book that you couldn't apply to your life? Not one thing, not one single thing? I don't believe you. I don't believe you. So yeah, that's what people are saying about this book. Do I highly recommend this book? Absolutely. Absolutely. I read it twice. I gave it 5 stars, and I will likely read it again. All right, let's get into something a little bit more thrilling, if you will. This book I actually read this year. I gave it a 5 stars. It's actually a thriller book, and it just kept me on my toes throughout the entire book. It had me confused in the best way because I didn't really know what was going to happen next. This book is called My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney. This is the first book that I've read from Alice Feeney, but now I want to read so many more of her books because the writing in this was impeccable. impeccable. I absolutely loved it. And I also mentioned that I want to read this book again because now that I know how it ends, I want to see if I can pick up on some of the signs that I didn't pick up on the first time when I read it. So I feel like I will definitely pick this up again at some point in my life. Essentially, it's about a woman named Eden. She and her husband just moved to a new town, and one day she goes out for a run. She's just getting herself acclimated with the town and the people in the town and things of that nature. And then one day she comes home from that run and her husband opens the door with another woman who is claiming to be her. And she's at the door. Her key doesn't fit. It won't allow her to get into the door. Her husband opens the door and says, "Who are you?" And Eden's like, "I'm the owner of this house." No, Eden's like, "I'm your wife. What are you talking about? Who are you?" And her husband is with this other girl who looks just like Eden. And from there, it's just crazy. It is crazy. So this is a book that I highly recommend. I gave it 5 stars, but I want to see what people are saying about it because I'm sure there's some haters out there. Okay, someone said 1 out of 5, bruh. Worse than Frida McFadden, and that's really saying something. Hated this book. First of all, not too much on my girl Frida, okay? Not too much on my girl Frida because I like me some Frida books, but I feel like this was completely different than a Frida McFadden book in the best way. Like, I like reading Frida's books, but this one, there were so many twists and turns, and it was very unpredictable, which I really enjoy when I'm reading a thriller book. So, I don't know. I didn't really get that from this book. The writing was completely different in my opinion. Someone said, none of the characters made sense. None of the internal mental dialogues ever made sense, which was 95% of the book. The remainder 5%, either dialogue or transcript of dialogue, made even less sense. Looking back, I'm not sure the so-called big reveal made sense. And I read her other book, Beautiful Ugly, in 2025, and it's one of my most regretted reads. Like, I don't know what to do to get those hours of my life back. And yes, I picked this one up because of the 4.3 review, and multiple people posted on social media that this is the best book of 2026. I was looking for some distraction and a quick mental escape, but neither the process nor the outcome were even remotely enjoyable. Should have known better. Okay, I have a few things to say. First of all, she said the ending the big reveal didn't make any sense. And I feel like that was the point. I feel like the point was to throw you off the entire book. So at the end, you're like, oh my gosh. I feel like that was the point. You know what I mean? Also, I feel like if you read her other book and regretted it, why would you read this one? Because I don't know. I feel like if you're not going to like the author's writing style, then you're probably just not going to like the books that they write. So I don't really know about that one. Someone said, what the hell am I reading? I'm halfway through and don't know what is going on. Generally, I don't like these sliding door, 2 alternating reality plots where something in one parallel universe affects the other. Reality is hard enough to comprehend now. Why make escapism reading twice as complicated? I feel like that's a you problem, honey. That's a you problem that you can't keep up because yes, there are so many plots and twists and turns in this book, but you got to keep up. You got to keep up and kind of think about all of the things that are happening in this book so that it all makes sense to you. And sometimes it didn't make sense. And that's, for me, what makes it enjoyable, because who wants a predictable read, especially for a thriller? Who wants a predictable read? I sure don't. I don't know. So I'm going to have to respectfully disagree. I did have a lot of like WTF moments while reading this book, but like I said, in the best way, because it's like you never knew what was going to happen next. I also really enjoyed that this book kind of felt like dystopian. Like if you've ever watched Black Mirror on Netflix, it kind of gave those vibes a little bit. So if you really enjoyed like those types of shows or books or things like that, you would definitely like this book here. Okay, let's get into the next book. So this book I actually read this year, and for me, this is probably one of my top reads this year so far. It's considered literary fiction / historical fiction, but honestly, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I did not want to put it down. And it's a book that I haven't, like, it's one of those genres or books that I haven't read before. And so now I want to read more literary fiction. I did give this book 5 stars, and this book is called The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. And I just love this book. It just kept me engaged the whole time. And essentially, it's about two twins. They're the Vine sisters, and they're Black in a small southern town. And they're white passing. So they're white passing in this predominantly Black town. And, they start growing up together, but you can see how different they are as twins. Like, one is more of a rebel and the other is more studious. Once they start to grow up a little bit, they end up running away from their hometown to build a life of their own. And once they move to that new town, they ultimately separate. So one starts living a completely different life than the other, and one considers herself more Black and the other considers herself like white. Like, she completely removes the Blackness in her genes, essentially, because she is a Black woman, and considers herself white. She ends up marrying a white man. She ends up having a white daughter, while the other sister ends up marrying a dark-skinned man with a daughter who's dark-skinned. And it's just interesting to see how their paths eventually cross and how that happens. But it's such a compelling book. There's so many aspects to it. It not only focuses on the lives of the sisters, but also their daughters as well, and their daughters' lives and some of the troubles or situations that they end up into as well. I felt it was very compelling. It was such a good book to me, and I would definitely read it again. It was one of those books I was like, wow, I wonder what's going to happen next. And it's a literary fiction, so I really enjoyed the storytelling aspect of it. It's a historical fiction, so we're going back into the times where there was, racism, but it was a really good book to read. So I highly recommend this book. So let's see what people are saying. Someone said, I do not understand how this book is rated as highly as it is. It is poorly written, drawn out, boring, and frankly annoying. I kept plugging along thinking it would have to get good at some point, but it never did. Waste of time. Dang. Someone said, gravely disappointing in all aspects, and they have 3 long paragraphs, but I'm only going to read the first one because, we don't want to be here all day. But she said, severe lack of character development. That I disagree on. I felt like there was definitely character development I wouldn't say for one of the twins, but I would say there was character development for like their daughters and being able to see them grow. So I disagree with that. I wouldn't say severe lack. There was definitely character development. To the point of doing a disservice to the very issues they are trying to bring light. For instance, many hot button issues are packed into this book without actually telling their story or sharing their experiences. Many of these people seem stuffed into this book just to tick the boxes of LGBTQ+, Black, cross-dressing, poverty, and many others. In no way do you get to experience these characters. They are flat, mere tools for the disappointing and chronologically inept plot. The lack of development these characters get just reinforces stereotypes and implicit biases. The overall story was so boring that I had to bribe myself to finish this book for a book club. Yeah, I didn't find it boring, and I feel like the different aspects of it is what made it a compelling read, because I think it would have been boring if we only just focused on the twin sisters, but we focused on the twin sisters, we focused on their partners, we focused on the daughters, we focused on the daughters' partners. So it wasn't just about the sisters. I feel like if it was just about the sisters and them just growing apart, then that would have made it a little bit boring. But I feel like because there were so many characters who were aligned in certain ways, that made it an interesting read to me. So I don't understand that one. Another person said, I'm so over this Black girl passing for white and dark-skinned Black men being portrayed as abusers narrative. Over it. Oof. Okay. Started off great. I couldn't finish it once the transgender stuff took over. I guess pop culture books are not for me. Okay, tell us how you really feel then. Let's read one more. DNF at 51%. I know I am in the huge minority, but I'm not going to finish this book. I'm about halfway through and I'm just bored. I understand from others that the last half really picks up, but isn't it the author's job to keep me engaged all the way through? I mean, I felt drawn to it the entire book, and I will agree that it does pick up a little bit more in the second half, but I don't know. I completely disagree. I didn't feel like it was boring in the first half. So I feel like it was setting the scene for what we were going to get introduced to in that second half. I don't think that it was boring. I think we were just setting the scene. So those are my opinions on that book, and I guess theirs too. And if you didn't like it, you didn't like it. I guess it's not everyone's cup of tea. All right, let's do one more. This is actually a nonfiction book. I actually really enjoyed this book. I think everyone should read this book. It is about money management. And so that's why I say everyone should read this book. It's called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. And I actually have another book on my TBR that I'm going to get started in reading from him, but this is a very good read. I have a lot of, again, dog-eared pages and highlights from this book. It mainly talks about our relationship with money, how we grew up with money, our patterns with money, and how that affects us moving forward in our finances, and how we can utilize our knowledge or lack of knowledge to learn more or better progress in our financial aspirations. So I really enjoyed this book. I felt like it was very valuable. I had a lot of moments in there, like a lot of moments that made me sit back and think about what were some ways in the past that I handled money in a certain way, or, how was I brought up in terms of financial literacy and my knowledge on money. And I feel like everyone should have a deeper understanding on their relationship with money and how their upbringing, or just how they view their relationship with money in general. Everyone should read this book, in my opinion. So I'm going to see what people are saying about it and why they didn't like it. I love those types of books that can be applied to different times or periods in your life that, you maybe didn't recognize before, but it's more applicable to your life now. So yeah, I definitely recommend this book. Okay, someone said 18 chapters of anecdotal money stories that have been explored in more depth by other authors, almost no examples of female investors/business owners, followed by a chapter that summarizes the entire book, followed by a chapter explaining that the author doesn't follow any of the advice he's just laid out. Not my cup of tea. I don't think I really got that from reading the book, but maybe I missed something. I don't know. Someone said it wasn't for me, and it wasn't the kind of book that I was expecting, but that title, or thought it would be something more scientific. Yeah, I guess you can kind of get that from the title, thinking that it could be more science-based. So I can understand where they're coming from for that, but to give the whole book a 1 star because of the title is crazy. I don't know. Someone said atrocious, disconnected, rambling, shallow retellings of Buffett, Munger, Klarman, etc. Absolute waste of money and time. Yikes. Someone said, I cannot even begin to describe how much I hated this book. If you want someone to mansplain money to you with an insane amount of anecdotes about war, billionaires, and blue-collar workers, this is your book. It was so bad, I wanted to actually blow my brains out. Oh my God. Maybe it could be a good book for an upper middle class plus cis white man who will have his mind opened by ideas like, did you know luck plays a role in building wealth? This should have been an article with periods after every word in that last sentence. I don't know. I feel like it can get very tricky when it comes to a self-help or an educational book like this one. People are going to have varying thoughts based on the knowledge they have accumulated throughout their years, and also how they just view life in general, or again, how much knowledge they have on money. For someone who may not be as financially literate or understand their relationship with money, this might be super valuable for them. For someone who, maybe has more introduction to managing their money in a better way, maybe it's not as valuable to them. So I feel like it's all up to the individual and how they really take or perceive this. I felt like there were really good ideas and themes in this book in terms of the history of how the markets work and how a relationship with money works. So again, I really enjoyed it. I'm going to read it again. Maybe my rating will change, when I read it for the second time. I don't know, because I initially gave this a 5 star. I try to make it a point that other ratings or reviews won't really influence my personal review, because for me, it's like, everyone has their own taste, everyone has their own mindset, and what resonated with one person might not resonate with another. So I can completely understand that. But that is the end of today's video. I'm going to end it here. If you really enjoyed this video or read any of the books that I talked about today, please let me know in the comments. I also want to know what your thoughts were. Like I said, everyone has varying opinions about different books, and so what I really enjoyed, another person might not like. So again, like I mentioned, my Goodreads link is down below in the description, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!